Boutique fitness has just exploded over the past 15 years. How was it and how would it have been to been there at the beginning? And really, SoulCycle was the very beginning of the boutique explosion. Well, my guest today, Shannon Tracey, who is a VP at Mariana Tek, a CRM that handles and a marketing platform that handles many different boutique brands. She was there at the beginning with SoulCycle. She was there at the very beginning with Flywheel, and she talks through this as the industry started to form. But as importantly, she talks about where the industry is currently and where it's going. And whether you're an owner of a boutique fitness or wellness concept, or you're just interested in business and how to attract and really, more importantly, retain your customers, Shannon speaks to that at length today. And she's just a wonderful, really laid back guest. Remember, every episode is brought to you by ThriveMore Autopilot. If you own a brick and mortar fitness or wellness concept and you need more help generating additional leads, a waterfall of leads, actually getting those leads to book and show, which is easier said than done, and then converting those leads to a long-term recurring revenue membership, ThriveMore Autopilot can help you do that. That's thrivemore.ai. Just go to thrivemore.ai and you can schedule an intro call there. Enjoy this episode. On today's episode of the ThriveMore podcast, Shannon Tracey is my guest. She is the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Mariana Tek. It's a boutique fitness platform built for brands that put experience first. So think about CRM, marketing platforms, and everything you need to run a brick and mortar wellness, fitness, recovery studio. With more than 15 years in the industry, and she's opened more than 30 studios across the US, including SoulCycles and Flywheels, she brings a deeper operator experience and a deeper perspective than most people who I've met in the CRM or software space when it comes to actually what happens in a brick and mortar. She's been a long-time advocate for the boutique fitness industry. She's a mom of 2 daughters, and Shannon has built her career on helping brands scale while keeping the client experience at the center. And I can say that because I'm one of her customers. So with that being said, welcome to the show, Shannon.
Thank you. I was so excited to be here and honored that Rockbox is a Mariana Tek client.
Absolutely. We are glad to be partners with you. And I wanted to bring you on because there's so much being discussed today around, and this is definitely not a commercial for Mariana Tek for anybody listening. This is really, Shannon is a great resource to share statistics about fitness and wellness in the industry. And a lot of people listening to this show are budding entrepreneurs or current entrepreneurs or people that want to possibly get into the fitness space or the wellness space and own their own brick and mortar and maybe leave corporate America. And Shannon is uniquely qualified because she's been in that role of working in a studio, launching huge brands, and then also now on the software side. So maybe Shannon, could you just tell us a little bit about your background and about you being in the trenches, really when boutique fitness was coming up fast and was on fire, and you were part of 2 like on fire brands as well. So can you speak to that?
Yeah. Well, thanks for that, and thanks for the great intro. Yeah, I definitely think of my story with boutique fitness as really unique because I've sort of evolved with the industry and have seen it grow from really, kind of early roots. So I started at SoulCycle back when there was one full-time location, Upper West Side, and then the Hamptons location, which was a seasonal studio. I was at SoulCycle for a year. That was back in 2008. And it was a really interesting time because it was sort of uncharted territory. Boutique fitness was, like you said, it was brand new. No playbooks. No one was running sales trainings or trying to sell memberships. In fact, there were not even memberships in boutique fitness back then. It was strictly class credits, at least at SoulCycle. And it was a phenomenon. There were crazy wait lists, and you started to see this like rise of instructors becoming celebrities. And so I'm bringing up all of those points because I think at the core, what was really special about that experience was just seeing how much focusing on the actual experience was the sales playbook, right?
Yeah.
It was before people were talking about, conversion rates and, how many touches it took to get someone to sign up for a membership. And so it's really all about delivering consistent experiences and kind of getting the ops straight.
Yeah. Could you feel it? Because SoulCycle is kind of the OG. Everybody knows Orange Theory because they franchise and sold 1,000 units and whatnot. But SoulCycle was really the OG wait list, I'm wearing the brand. I'm everything about like, and that was not, unless you were a bodybuilder at Gold's, you didn't really wear your gym shirt, right? You didn't wear where you worked out. It wasn't a thing. Could you feel that happening in real time when you were working there?
I mean, absolutely. It was and I think that's like you tapped on such an important thing about, what makes boutique fitness special, which is like
Yeah.
it becomes part of people's identity.
Yeah.
And I think that they did such a great job early on paying attention to every single touch point that you had with the brand, down to like, retail displays and, how class would start and end and how you interacted with clients at the front desk. Um, so, yeah, I think that was super intentional from the earliest days and definitely built, kind of bringing spins classes outside the gym because obviously that existed at the time, and really kind of creating this, bespoke niche, experience that, the owners were able to design from scratch, sort of like fitting the needs that they felt like they were missing in the gym.
Yeah. I used to talk about that experience and just everything focused on that. Solidcore is another brand that did that so well, and they just exited for 150 locations, 150, and they just sold that for 750 million dollars. Founder made over 100 million, and she talks about how she relentlessly focused on what you say when they walk in the front door, how you greet them, how you help them, how you show them the studio, how you get them, onto their reformer because it's a Pilates. I mean, she was obsessive about that and obsessive at 150 locations, across the nation, making sure every single experience was consistent. And it paid off with $750 million exit. So
Yeah,
you nailed it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about Solidcore that's really unique is that they're obviously in a very crowded Pilates space, but the way that they have positioned themselves, I think really lets them stand out. They sort of say like, "We're not for everyone. This is the more athletic, the version of Pilates," and that's something that they've been able to really cascade through the network and down to instructors, and everyone sort of buys into that. And so when clients come in and feel that and can identify with it, I think that's what gets them to be really sticky.
For the listeners right now, that is, I did. You learn more right there than you will an entire semester in an MBA for a marketing class, because what Shannon just said is, don't be for everybody. Be for a specific avatar that you're hyper focused on, and then own that avatar. But don't go after everybody because then you're vanilla. But just say, here's who
Absolutely.
we're for, and here's who we're not for. And the consumer wants that. They want to be told, like, where do I fit in this whole thing? Yeah. So how did you go from SoulCycle then to Flywheel, which was the next juggernaut that just went nuts?
I got really lucky. So, I got really close with one of the co-founders of SoulCycle. Her name's Ruth Zuckerman. She, founded SoulCycle and then went on to co-found Flywheel. Um, Flywheel started as sort of, an answer to, the crowd that was starting to get really into SoulCycle, but wanted something a little bit more athletic. So Flywheel started, in 2010. So I started in the very early days of that business, first ops employee, and we built all of our own technology at Flywheel. So um, what that meant was, we had on the bike technology. This is before Peloton existed, but it was before Peloton had on the bike technology, and before brands like Cycle Bar started to pop up. So Flywheel really started that, on the bike performance metrics tracking. We had what we call torque boards in the room where you could race other riders in the room, and because we were doing all of this bespoke, stuff with technology, we needed to build our own booking software because, at the time there was nowhere out there that had all the, open APIs and things that we
Yeah.
needed to be able to support a new form of technology in the space. So, Flywheel built all its own technology, and that sort of became the foundation for what would become Mariana Tech many, many years later. But I always like to tell that story because I think such a big part of Mariana Tech's DNA is that we are former operators. I'm not a founder of Mariana, but I did meet the founders of Mariana at Flywheel. They led all the technology there. And, going back to your point about not being for everyone, I think that was also something really important that as we set out to build Mariana, we said, we're going to be for experience focused boutique brands. We're not going to try to be for, nail salon spas and, concepts. We said, we're going to go really, really deep in boutique.
Yep.
And that's what we've done.
Yeah. It's funny, for the listeners that aren't familiar. So SoulCycle, of course, spin concept that really, brought the loud music and the dark rooms and really that real bespoke experience. But heavier female ridership, and definitely more of what you think of when you think of boutique fitness and that avatar. It's funny because when I was looking for my first location, the flagship location to build the first rock box, I looked at a space right next to where the Flywheel in Charlotte was, and a class was letting out, and all these dudes came out, and they're in they're full on, like you'd see them on the street, with bike shorts and the wind resistant tight jerseys and all that, in the hat. And I'm thinking, man, they are really into this because there's no wind resistance in that room. But it was funny. That was the avatar. It was like the
Mhm.
person who's experienced on the road, but would rather do it in a controlled setting and, stable weather and no traffic and whatnot. But man, very different person walked out of that than would walk out of a SoulCycle. It was kind of similar
Totally.
product, but kind of cool to see
Yeah, we
that.
always said
So
the people that really resonated with Flywheel were like, maybe people that played sports in college or just
yeah,
really loved it in high school and like had that competitive side to them and also loved cycling, but wanted something that was a little less, choreographed and more athletic.
yeah, for sure. So Shannon, let's fast forward. For the people that don't know, COVID just slaughtered Flywheel, and Peloton didn't help, and so that company has gone the wayside. And SoulCycle was purchased by Equinox, so they landed on their feet. But if we can jump forward to today, and we'll kind of
Mhm.
go back and forth, but if you think about today, and you're in this leading edge CRM, and more importantly, you get exposure to so many different brands in the market, see what the market's doing. What major trends or even shifts have you noticed in fitness and wellness over the past 1 to 2 years? So if we go back 24 months and then bring it to today, what have you seen happen in the last 2 years that is unique to owning and running a boutique, fitness or wellness concept?
Yeah. I would say one massive one is just the consumer is so much more educated, and that is driving so many different things. So, like, under the category of the more educated consumer, I think that's exactly why strength training is exploding the way that it is, right? It works. There's a lot of education now around women's health and healthy aging and so much research that's gone into that. If you're on a GLP-1, people know you've got to maintain muscle mass. And, that's obviously a new phenomenon in and of itself. And I think there's also, because the consumer's more educated, probably why things like cycling have died down. People, back then used to take 5 spin classes a week. And
Yeah,
now, we know that's not really, of course you can do it. It's better than doing nothing or not working out if, more than one day a week. But you've got to have variety and you've got to have that resistance training. So I think the more educated consumer is definitely what I would say is like the biggest shift. That's also driving this personalization movement that, I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about. And then, second big thing that I'm seeing is just this massive rise in events, right? I'm signed up for my first High Rocks in December. Like,
super
this
cool.
is just becoming something that I think more and more as people look to, engage with people outside of like just going for drinks, right? That's
Yeah.
obviously another big thing. But I think that is driving this desire for people to get out and connect with their community outside of the actual studio itself and, kind of engage in these bigger event formats.
This segment is sponsored by Rockbox Fitness Franchising. Take control of your destiny and join the boutique fitness revolution with Rockbox Fitness. If you're ready to make a real impact in your community and own your own business that empowers people to achieve their best life, then Rockbox is the opportunity you've been looking for. They provide comprehensive support from site selection, upfit, training, and turnkey marketing, so you can open your studio with confidence and a strong recurring revenue member base. Visit rockboxfitness.com and click on franchise opportunities to learn more about this exciting venture in the fast-growing boutique fitness industry. It's time to turn your passion for fitness and for business into a thriving venture. I'm Gen X. I'm 55, and my generation was you went to work and you worked really, really hard. That was the carrot and stick. Every company was the carrot and the stick. Here's the money, go chase it. Here's the stick if you don't. And so you worked really hard, and then you may go play softball with your buddies, your colleagues, and then go drink. That was like the thing. Then you go get beers. And I've read both things on Gen Z where, and I have two Gen Z kids that just grown and left the house, but I've read where they're not drinking at nearly the rate, like at 1/3 the rate of Gen X and even millennials. But what they're doing is they're creating these social experiences because you need socialization, and they're doing it through fitness, through boutique fitness, but also like even wellness, like group saunas.
Mm-hmm.
Seems kind of weird to me because it just as I got older, like I like my privacy and I want my own little private suite and stuff. But you're seeing the same thing. I am working in San Francisco, New York. People are holding meetings like with a flip chart, like a business meeting, and everybody's wearing a swimsuit in the sauna, which is kind of mind-boggling. But I get it because they don't want to go drink, and they or as their main way to socialize. So they're finding other ways to do that, and obviously the boutique experience is part of that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm an elder millennial, and if you ever want to drink beers after softball, count me in. That sounds
I love
that
it.
sounds fun for me.
Me too.
Um, but yeah, I mean, we're definitely seeing that. I think, probably the best example or the example that gets cited the most often is Othership, which is on Mariana Tek. They're in Toronto and New York. And we've had events. Mariana Tech's had events where we're bringing our community together. We're bringing them to Othership to go through, that experience together. And then, we'll get together after, whether it's drinks or dinner or something else. But it brings people together in a way that sort of disarms them or like, kind of going through anything like that as a group, I think just gets you closer and, makes for closer connections.
Yeah. I mean, if you can stand 140 degrees together for 45 minutes or 3 minutes in 39-degree water, like you've kind of been in the foxhole of that person. So you've broken bread, so to speak. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hey,
Absolutely.
what are you seeing? Because you have a behind the scenes look. If we look at the industry and we look at and this applies to so many other industries, but today we're going to focus on boutique fitness and boutique wellness. The role of technology, but most specifically wearables
Hmm.
and even AI and apps and how that's playing in. Just 10 years ago, you had to buy the heart rate monitor at Orange Theory. You had to
Hmm.
buy, if you wanted to participate, you had to buy F45's chest heart rate monitor.
Hmm.
If you wanted to be in, some given modality, you had to buy their thing. Now, everybody's got a Whoop, an Aura, an Apple Watch. How are you seeing the brands incorporate that into their gamification or reward system or whatever when they don't actually own the wearable technology?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think there's no better illustration of like how much people are craving like personalization and like that whole piece about the educated consumer more so than like the demand for wearables.
Yeah.
I think that we're probably just sort of in the early days of how brands will incorporate wearables into the experience. I think one of the things that we're doing and we're really focused on now is building a consumer data platform. And what the consumer data platform will allow us to do is tap into multiple data sources, aggregate them, and get a full 360 view of the customer. And so eventually we'll be able to ingest that data, serve it to the customer, if the consumer wants that. That's probably further down the line, but definitely something that we're focused on as we're building our consumer data platform. So I guess, I don't know that anyone is doing anything groundbreaking with wearables today other than, kind of having conversations on the instructor level with people. I think that there is a whole world to come with how wearables will be incorporated and how vendors like Mariana can help support that effort. Um, and then in terms of what was it, apps and AI?
Yeah, just apps and AI and just, how
Yeah.
it seems like there's so much outside of the four-wall brand experience that didn't used to be there. that people want to bring into that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for AI, there's like the obvious use cases of like reporting and, kind of asking a question and getting it back via that format. But again, kind of going back to the CDP point, I think AI will only be as good as the context that you give it, and it'll only be as personalized as the context that you give it. So that's why, like right now, we're working on this really foundational layer. Our chief product officer, Andy Swansberg, always says like we're a developer. We're like a developer of like, let's say a new condo building, and right now we're sort of building the plumbing, the sewage, all sort of the background to be able to eventually power really powerful AI and support the engagement in studio. I think at best, AI will be able to allow us to do things at scale that we would normally do on our own if we were really close to the consumer.
Mm,
So, to give you an example, let's say, Roger has gone to 50 of my classes and he drops off and I haven't seen him in a month. And he completed a challenge 3 months ago. If you are able to leverage all of that information and get Roger a really specific, crisp outreach to him and also drop a free class in his account and say, your favorite teacher is teaching next week. Why don't you come on me? That's probably something that if you're a studio owner and you're really tapped into who Roger is, you might do on your own, but
yeah.
AI will eventually be able to do that for you.
Yeah. You just summarized the whole personalization approach that we're trying to do manually now, all of us, all brands, which is so much easier said than done.
Yeah.
If we slightly shift the perspective here and talk about the actual consumer, the average, just we'll say American, certainly worldwide, but we'll talk about Americans here. What do you think, Shannon, because you see the data, what do you think is missing from most people's approach to fitness and wellness? And then I guess the back end of that question is, and so then how can the industry serve them better?
Yeah. Um, at conferences and other industry events, like the topic is always like serving the other 80% because there's 20% of people that are actively going to a gym and 80% who aren't. I think that I think that just kind of learning how to speak to that 80% is really important and really interesting. I think, the conversation is shifting a bit where I think that people now are doing something rather than nothing. I think that that's something that I've seen change, especially with the younger demographic. Like they are more active, and I think the all or nothing approach sort of has to go away. Um, I know that some of the ways that you can engage that 80% is do more to tell customer stories, right? How can they see themselves in someone that has gone through and, joined a brand like Rockbox and been really successful that is short on time and, has a life outside of
Yeah.
actually working out. And getting them to identify with your brand, I think is so important.
Yeah, for sure. I was always an all or nothing guy for the longest time, and finally, maybe it's just gotten older, maybe a little wiser, maybe a little lazier. I don't know, I've definitely, I'm not as hard on myself where I'm like, hey man, if I got in there 3 times this week, that's good. Did I crush it and give it my all? That's to be debated. But in the past, it was 5 times, 6 times a week, killing myself every single time. And there's a time and place in everybody's life, I think, for that. But I've definitely tried to go a little easier on myself and just, hey, good job. I got in today. I did a workout today.
I don't think you're allowed to call yourself lazy as a multiple business owner, operator.
This is why I don't have
I
the
don't think
energy to
that's
go to the gym. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Although I find and you know this, we all know this. I have so much more energy when I do stay consistent with my
Yeah,
with my
yeah,
fitness and nutrition. Um,
absolutely.
so you see these different brands,
Mhm.
and from the outside, people could look at the industry and go, "Oh my gosh, this industry is super saturated." Now, I will say, I don't think it's saturated. I do think it's highly competitive. But anything in America that you can make money at, because we're a capitalistic society, there's going to be 20 people lined up behind you to steal your lunch money, right? It's just that's capitalism. How are you seeing, again, through the data? How
Mhm.
are you seeing successful brands differentiate themselves in an industry that can feel saturated to an outsider?
Yeah, I think, we kind of hit on it a little bit when we were talking about Solidcore before, but I think it's like having a brand that is differentiated. And when I say that, it doesn't mean that, you can't have the same reformers that someone down the street has, or, the same equipment that someone down the street has. But it's really how you um, position yourself, how you talk to your customer, kind of all the things that make your secret sauce, or what, really is driving your brand. And I think that the most successful brands are the ones that really know who they are and can really speak to their consumer. And, they're the brands that people do want to buy, the merch from, wear the merch around, and, kind of, bring in, and is part of their identity. So, I think that's probably what I would say is core. I think you talk about this a lot. The people that have a really robust training program, whether that's, sales process or hospitality driven, that is something that, is going to be a major differentiator, right? A lot of people, I think, kind of throw front deskers or instructors in, and those people have to buy into what you're doing and to the brand positioning to be able to deliver the experience that you want. And I think that's something that I would say the best brands are doing, is really investing in training, really investing in, quality control of instructors, and not just training for front desk, but, obviously, like, continuing to make sure that they've got the best talent in the room. Um, so yeah, I think those all kind of ladder up to, like, the category of having a differentiated brand that is, and especially as you scale, really well defined and understood across the board.
Yeah. I mean, you said a mouthful when you said it's, training. You have to continually invest in these people, continue to train. Training is a process, not an event.
Mhm.
People go, I went to a conference, I'm trained. No, 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 no. That's just, you just got a taste for it. Now it's about practicing and refining it, and practicing and refining and practicing and refining. But it almost feel, and I actually read, this was in a book called The Sales Machine. So I forgot the name of the book, but the guy quotes data where 90% of people, of humans, are not continual learners. In fact, they choose, they don't want to. They kind of like, I got through school, I went to high school, or I went to college, or I got an MBA, whatever, but I'm done. I've learned. And only 10% actively seek out, self-growth and self-improvement. So you have to, those 10% will always do it. It's trying to get, you know, another 40% or 30% of the 100% to come with you. You're never going to get everybody, but those aren't the employees for you. But I've actually, one of my struggles has been owning different brands and having many franchisees, is having that same mentality across the whole network of, this is forever. Like, we train forever. Till the day you sell this business, you train, you invest in your people, you monitor, make sure they're doing the online, learning management system we have, and you're role playing, they attend the calls, all that. And that's easier said than done. Getting people into that mindset is easier said than done, because I think I think as a nation, we're guilty of, you go to high school, then you go to college, and then maybe you go get your graduate degree, and then you're done. That's just not if you want to make money, and not if you want to be, super successful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I have a sales team at Mariana, and I think that's, like, the one thing I can say about sales that is just, I think, fascinating, is that the best sellers are the people that are committed to growth.
Yeah.
Whether that's, listening to podcasts, or using a technique that maybe they haven't before. I think that's sort of like, you've got to, let go of your ego, and yeah, be continuously learning and continuously practicing.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is from Winston Churchill, and wisdom is the knowledge you acquire the moment after you needed it. The
I
moment
love
after
that.
you needed it. And that's wisdom. And that's why then now we want to apply that wisdom so that we don't make the same mistake, or we do better. Um, if we stay right in that vein, what role do you feel that, because what I'm also hearing you kind of say is, you have to build trust with the consumer. We're in a recession of trust. Like, we're in a
Mhm,
trust recession, no doubt about it.
mhm.
Too many marketing messages, too much nonsense in the world, and we're just in a trust recession. So where have you seen, like, storytelling, and I think you've spoken to a little bit, with Solidcore as an example, but that storytelling approach with clients that you serve, to get their brand message out to the public or their avatar, their prospects? Where have you seen storytelling to build, and specifically the question is around building trust and loyalty within that potential prospect base?
Yeah, I think customer stories are always great, features on blogs and whatnot. I think especially as like there's so much content now that's generated by AI, that telling real customer stories is going to be even more important to the authenticity of the brand. Um, it's something that we do all the time at Mariana too. Like we'd rather talk less about our features and more about like success stories of our clients and wins of our clients. One, because we have an amazing roster of clients, but two, because I think that's, that kind of shows the partnership off in a way that just listing off, features on your website
Yeah.
could possibly ever accomplish. I think that, when you are telling those stories, like I said before, like you're able to, people are able to connect with that person, or that story, resonate with that story more, potentially see themselves in that brand, which I think is super important.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by ThriveMore Autopilot. The latest data shows a large amount of small to mid-sized business owners are living paycheck to paycheck, and that is not why you started a business in the first place. We all start businesses to create the freedom in our lives that we want and to give us options. But to do that, you need more leads, and you need to turn those prospects into long-term paying customers. Well, the solution is ThriveMore Autopilot. ThriveMore Autopilot is the turnkey solution to take the stress and the hard work out of new customer acquisition, which is the lifeblood of any small business. ThriveMore Autopilot works on your behalf to generate a waterfall of new leads through various channels, to nurture those leads with proprietary AI solutions that mimic human interaction, to sell memberships and help you increase your monthly recurring revenue, and they even provide you coaching and your team coaching on the most effective sales techniques and give you a community of other like-minded business owners. ThriveMore Autopilot is how you scale your business without stress and the relentless phone calls and texts and reach outs to the prospects to get them to show up for that first appointment or to show up to that call. So learn how ThriveMore Autopilot can help you win big by going to thrivemore.ai. That's thrivemore.ai. ThriveMore Autopilot, the strategic partner for small to mid-sized business owners to help you scale and live the life of your dreams. I'd love to ask you, because you deal with, and you have a team underneath, a big team underneath you, but you deal with so many different business owners. So you deal with franchisors, and we're a unique bird. And then you have franchisees, and then you have independents, lots of independents, and you have independents that are very successful with multiple locations. What traits, sorry, not necessarily skill sets, but traits. I always say that traits are kind of, things you learned when you were pretty young, or they were, God just put them in you. And when I'm hiring people, I always say, you can't put in what God left out, right? Like, I'm not going to change the 30-year-old. So if we talk about traits, not skills that they can learn, but traits, what traits have you seen a successful independent, a successful franchisee, whatever it may be? Are there 2 or 3 or 4 commonalities you're seeing?
Yeah, I think that I think it's really one. It's just sort of every touch point that you have with your consumer, paying very close attention to it and making sure that, sort of your brand promise is hit through all of them. I think, going back to what we were talking about before with SoulCycle and how those founders really poured everything into the actual experience, that they felt was missing. I think that's, you kind of have to look at how your consumer experiences the brand from the minute they land on your website, the minute they land on your social, to the minute they take their first class. All of those things you've got to, be really intentional about. But that first starts with defining who you are,
Yeah.
and then sort of, building from there.
Yeah. I don't know what your experience has been, but mine has certainly been with me, because I code, I've got this other company called ThriveMore Autopilot, and we work with a lot of different brands, all boutique fitness or wellness or recovery brands. And, it's the one thing that I'm seeing is tenacity is critical. Like, you just have to keep showing up. You can't lose if you don't quit. But there's also, we're helping people with pre-launches before they've even opened. And if you're pre-launching your second location, you get it because you've been there, done that. You understand what is needed. But a lot of these first time entrepreneurs in this space, at least, and fitness, wellness is a passion play. So it's not like we're in the trash business, which is a great business and super profitable, just not really very sexy, right? And people don't like going to it because they love trash. They're chasing the opportunity for financially. But so many people will want to open their own studio because they loved yoga or Pilates or boxing or whatever it was. And so they want to bring that to their community and make money doing it. But man, I see so many people, franchisees and independents, build a location under the auspice of, if I build it, they will come.
Mhm.
And I don't think there can be anything further than the truth, right? In today's market, like, you can build it, but if you don't tell the world about it and keep telling them about it again and again and again and again and again, nobody's coming. Nobody's coming. And I'm curious what you've seen in your experiences with independents or franchisees around their first location and kind of expectations around that, what you're seeing. Because I want the people that are thinking about entrepreneurship to hear the real deal and decide for themselves. I always say we serve our audience by either inspiring them to go for it and jump, or scaring the hell out of them so that they don't and make a terrible decision in their life, and it's kind of binary, but we serve them either way. We serve the audience either way. So what have you know, what have you seen around that whole, I'll build it and they'll come, and your history with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, going back to your first point about boutique fitness being a passion industry, there are certainly easier ways to make money, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, going just to answer the question about like for studio ownership, I think that there has to be a really focused effort on membership pre-sales. I think that is, something that maybe 10 years ago you didn't have to be as focused on. And now you certainly do. Getting the word out early, connecting with all the right people in the community. I would say kind of going back to even before you start your first studio, um, decide what level of support you need, and if it's a brand that you want to build yourself, or if you want to join a great, sort of proven network like a Rockbox and go in as a franchisee. That's sort of like decision one. um I would say that something that I think has really shifted over the last 10 years is this idea that certain franchisors have you know built or popularized, is that you could be an absent franchisee and have this great, boutique studio business, and that is so far from the truth, and
Not
I'm
true.
just so
Yep.
glad that we are beyond that, and not, likely a lot of the people that were sold that dream either, have moved on, or, have or are, like, really in the trenches
Reoriented.
now.
Yeah. Reoriented.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think so much of that is just, you do have to be in the studios to, to create that culture, to, make sure that the experience is great. Um, we've invested a lot in our own data and sharing insights of Mariana Tech, the wider customer base, to identify trends across the industry. And something that I think is so fascinating is that if you get someone in the door, they take their first class, there's only 50% chance that they'll come back. Um,
Wow.
and of that 50%, those that make it to their fifth class have an 80% chance of staying with you.
Mm.
And so if there's nothing, there's no other, sort of better data point to illustrate that, like, experience and delivering a great experience is actually what creates long-term customers.
Yeah.
Sounds obvious, but I think that that data point really helps illustrate that.
No, for sure. And you're starting to create that habit, and once it becomes a habit, it's anchored, and you don't have to, you're not dragging them. Yeah. Um, yeah, I actually know a business owner that did not attend his own grand opening.
Oof.
And I just thought, I can tell you how this movie's going to end.
Yeah.
And it did. It ended the exact way I thought it would end. But you're right. It doesn't, I don't, I've owned 4 brick and mortars on my own, and I didn't have to. Now, I was there a lot because I was a franchisor too, so I really want to understand the business. But we just found if you really put in a stupid amount of effort, the first 6 to 12 months, and you build your team, you train your team, and you have these, you can expect what you inspect, and you start to get that culture. You can then pull away. You don't have to be so physically present if you have a good GM, a competent GM. But man, that whole absentee, we don't even say that. In fact, I tell everybody, we had another brand that we sold, and I still have Rockbox, and both discovery days, I would always say, this is going to be harder than you think it's going to be. Like, hear what I'm saying, because this sounds sexy and fun and great and really cool, and it is. And it's going to be harder than you think. And if you go into it feeling that way and accepting that, it won't be so bad because you expected it. But there's no such thing as an absentee business, and even a laundromat. There's leaks and there's dryer vents that get clogged and all. So there's no such thing as an absentee business. You have to put some effort into a business, and a brick and mortar physical location with a service, probably a little bit more effort, than an average business.
Yep,
Well,
absolutely.
this has been really just, you know the data so well, and you're so experienced in this industry. If we talked about eternal learning, I'm going to ask you 3 questions that I usually ask all my guests. One is going to be about, like, what do you read? Because if we're always trying to improve our skill set and learn and grow, and whether that's customer experience, whether that's sales, management, leadership, hiring, whatever it is, software, you always need to be learning. So is there a book that you've recently read, or maybe you read 20 years ago, and when you set it down, Shannon, you were like, wow, that's forever changed the way I think about something? What book would
Yeah.
that be? Yeah. Or
Okay, well,
books.
I have to show you this because I have 2 little girls. So this is what
Oh,
is
yeah.
on my desk currently. So it's a children's book called Montauk Has a Very Lucky Shark. That's not a book that changed my life, but those are mostly, if I'm being real right now as a
Yeah.
mom of a 2 and 4-year-old, I'm reading children's books.
I love
No,
it.
but more seriously, I think 2 books that I can think of. One, I love The Four Agreements. I think that's a great book for everyone to read. And then 2, there's a great book, called The Challenger Sale. I love that book.
Hmm.
It's a sales book. I'll have to get you
I've
the
not read
author
that.
and the
Yeah,
show notes.
we'll put that in the show notes. We'll find it. We'll research it. The Challenger Sale.
The Challenger Sale, and then there's a great book called The Sales Acceleration Formula by I think it's the founder of HubSpot that created that. It's more like SaaS
I've
leaning.
read that. Yeah, I've read that.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I love that book because, I read it in the early days of Mariana, and it basically said, like, you have to have your account executives really know the business, and they would have their AEs, like, actually create a website and do things like that, and I think, you can apply that to any industry, whether it's, Mariana Tek selling SaaS and our AEs coming from the industry, or, Rockbox employee really, loving the work out themselves and then making the sale, the sales process is then so much easier 'cause,
Yeah.
you're bought in.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I'll check out the Challenger Sale. And then if we were to fast forward to the end of your life, and you're mother of 2 young children, so this is going to be many decades from now, but we fast forward to the end of your life, and we're at your funeral, and there's a loved one reading your eulogy, but that loved one is only allowed 3 words, and it doesn't have to make a phrase or anything, but just 3 words to describe your impact on them, or your impact on the people that are at that funeral. What 3 words do you hope that they choose to describe you?
I would say tenacious. Um, I would say, um, I'm a self-starter, and, I would hope that, my kids would say, like, they felt very loved,
Mm,
or supported.
yeah. I love asking that question because it was asked of me, and it's just for like a 12-month leadership program, and it was part of the admission process. And it was just like a throwaway question, I think, for them, but it really rocked me to the core because I realized, wow, those are the 3 words I should focus on every day. Like, if that's what it's boiling down to, all this other stuff's nonsense. Like, I need to focus on growing my impact with, of in these 3 areas, or these 3 words. Which just boils it down to, like, what matters, what really, really matters.
Yeah, I need to go I'm gonna have to go back and think about that, journal a
Yeah.
little bit about it.
Yeah. It distills a crazy world down to what really, really matters in mind. Because,
Yeah.
when you're there, nobody's gonna say, he was rich, or, or she was famous. They don't care. It's like, they made me feel and
Mhm.
I could lean into them because they were whatever.
I love
And then
that.
last question before we find out how people can contact you or follow you and stuff. But the last question would be, if I gave you a magic wand, and you could wave that magic wand and you can make any change to the world, Shannon, and it is the world according to Shannon when we wake up tomorrow. If you were to wave that magic wand, how is the world, or how are people, how is it different tomorrow morning, according to Shannon?
Maybe just a little bit more compassion or understanding, and maybe being less quick to judge. I think everyone's got their own thing, their own story. People are, the way that they are, and that's, combination of a lot of different factors. I think more than anything else, being a mom, I sort of, you really understand that people are born with a certain personality in a
Oh,
lot of ways. And so, yeah, I think it's, just sort of like more compassion, more understanding, getting to know people a little bit more before you cast judgments.
yeah. That's been a very consistent. I've done 150 interviews, and that's been a very consistent answer by people. One guy, a guy named Ken Rusk, owns a ton of home service stuff, construction, blue collar gajillionaire. And he said, he summed it up perfectly. He's like, "Look at me, can you change?" I would say more people just be more understanding and curious of others. Like, if
Yeah,
I've been throwing rocks at you for 6,000 years, and you've been throwing rocks at me for 6,000, why don't we sit down and have a cup of coffee and talk about what's going on? I said
totally.
that is just the perfect analogy. Just like throwing rocks 6,000 years. Let's just sit down and have coffee. Let's figure this
I
out.
love
Yeah.
that. And by the way, I could be
Yeah.
better about it myself. So
Oh, 100%.
that's not to say I'm there yet.
Yeah. And I will tell you, I will agree with you. Like, you're talking about kids being different. Like, man, when you have children, that is the first time I think you really realize, okay, some of the stuff's hardwired. Some of the
Yeah,
stuff, they just come out of
completely.
because I'm
Yeah,
thinking, how are these two even related? I have an
yeah,
older, daughter that's 3 years older than my son. And I mean, how are these two human beings even related sometimes? Like, it
yeah.
just, they're so different. So different.
It's really a wild experience to go through and see. And yeah, it gives you a lot more, kind of compassion and understanding for other people
Yeah.
and
100%.
yourself too. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe that's just who I am.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Especially when you say something and you realize, oh my God, that's my mother or my father. That's you're not gonna hear it come out of my mouth. I was like, whoa. Um, well, hey, most important question, like if somebody wants to learn more about, Mariana Tek, the software platform, if there's an owner listening to this, or they just want to, Mariana Tek, I love is that they're always sharing data. There's great blogs, there's great white papers and ebooks that you guys put out just for free to educate the content marketing, to educate the potential prospects and your clients. Where can people follow you, connect with you, learn more?
Yeah. Our blog is a great place. Our social media, just at Mariana Tek. The blog is where you're going to find more detailed white papers, case studies. We're publishing our trends report, which will come out either end of September or October. We've done a ton this year in benchmarking, and kind of some of the stats that I shared before around conversion rates, things of that nature, you'll find on the blog. On our Instagram, you'll also be able to stay up to speed on our city tour, which is where we'll pop into several key markets, host events, get the community together, whether you're on Mariana Tek or not, and share some of the data points. We have one coming up in Chicago, where we've got an amazing group of female founders that are going to host a panel there. And then for me personally, you can follow me on LinkedIn, Shannon Tracey, or Shannon Trace on Instagram.
Awesome. We'll put all that in the show notes so if somebody's driving, they can just click that when they get to their
Amazing.
destination. Thank you so much for joining. I've always enjoyed talking with you, and just always experienced you as a very you just have grace, and yet you're incredibly intelligent and just present so well. So thank you for sharing today and being part of the ThriveMore podcast.
Thanks, Roger. I really appreciate it. Great to
You
be
bet.
here.
To everyone else listening, remember, set your intentions for the day and strive to thrive. Thank you for tuning in to the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any of the resources that we mentioned during the podcast. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. You can connect with me on any of the socials at Real Roger Martin. And be sure to check out our website, ThriveMoreBrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thanks again for tuning in.